Good morning, book clubberinos. I'm Megan. Hi. And I'm here to go over this week's reading of Outlander, which is book one of the Outlander series, in case you've been sleeping under a rock. And we were doing chapters 16 through 20 this week. So next week we'll be doing 21 through 25, which, can I just say, I feel like not a lot happened in these chapters. Don't shoot me. I mean, a lot happened. I mean, clearly there was 5 chapters worth of material to put in here. But I don't, like, when I go to find questions to ask or to use in our book club for these, I don't really find much. Like, and in fact, I don't find anything. So the questions this week are going to be a little bit more general about what do you kind of think about up to the book at this point, and less pointed. Anyway, maybe. I mean, a couple of them are a little bit more, they're general, but they're specific. Does that make sense? Anyway, so let's talk about the chapters. Chapter 16, One Fine Day. So this happens the morning after the events of the wedding / the bridal chamber. And suddenly it goes from being, they were very kind of relaxed and, while they were in the room, but then they leave the room and they kind of venture out. Jamie and Claire kind of venture out into the world to kind of go for a walk. And come to find, like, it just starts to feel awkward again. And so they kind of spend some time talking again, and she talks about, or she mentions, like, Jamie leaving the country to go to France, and then he comes back, and he had sent word that he was returning, and so Dougal met him at the coast, which is where he was coming from when they ran into Claire. And she asks why he didn't go back to Lallybroch. And he says that Dougal has told him that his sister Jenny got pregnant with a child from Blackjack Randall. And he's like, I just couldn't bring myself to go back. That he felt like it was partially his fault that this happened to her. And also, he's got a price on his head, and kind of going back to his home, that would kind of be the first place that they would look for him. So he decides, so he can't go back. But that there is a man who is an English deserter, who knows who actually killed the English soldier that he is accused of killing. And so he's kind of on a search to kind of find this guy. So he kind of mentions that he kind of wondered if Dougal is the one that hit him in the head with the axe, which kind of shocks Claire. But Jamie's like, not really. Like, and he goes into this long explanation that, like, Colum isn't, like, in that great a shape, and everybody kind of knows that. But Hamish is still way too young to take over the clan, because he's only, like, 8. So it's going to be, like, another 10 years, realistically, before Hamish is able to take over the clan. And that leaves Dougal, but not everybody is really on board with Dougal being the chief, because Dougal's a little bit more hot-headed and more apt to rush into things than Colum is. Colum's the thinker. But that, Jamie has some claim to the title of clan chieftain, because his mother is Colum and Dougal's sister. So, or was Colum and Dougal's sister. So he could, if he wanted to, put his name in there to be chieftain, and some people would like that. So this kind of starts Claire thinking, well, it's one thing if the English come after Jamie as just a Fraser Klansman, or a Mackenzie Klansman for that matter, but to come after the Laird of Clan Mackenzie would be a totally different thing. And not likely something the English would want to do. So probably his whole, like, the price on his head would just magically go away. So, and then she realizes what a bad position she put him in when he brought her back when she was trying to escape from the castle out of at the gathering. So she's like, great, I put him in even more danger. So that's awesome. So that goes on, and they see this group come in. That's, a group of men, 20 or 30 men. And it's kind of mentioned in passing, and they're kind of like the mob. They're called the Black Watch, which is kind of like this informal police group or force that kind of keeps order in the Highlands, I guess. I don't know how closely they're working with the English. And some of them patrol their own areas, and they collect subscriptions from clients for the safeguarding of cattle and property. And if you don't pay them in a timely manner, they may come and just take your livestock when you're sleeping. So, they sound like really great people. So anyway, this is a really long chapter, and I just don't really feel like that much happens after that. Like, Jamie, recites some poetry to her. They do have a brief conversation about Frank. That she still has feelings for Frank, but she's clearly developing feelings for Jamie. It's no secret. And Jamie realizes that now, of course, to Jamie, Frank is dead. He assumes that Frank is gone. But, Claire knows otherwise. So then she says this down at the bottom. I had kissed my share of men, particularly during the war years, when flirtation and instant romance were the light-minded companions of death and uncertainty. So, I guess depending on your definition of faithfulness, she had never slept with anybody besides Frank, but she had definitely kissed other men besides Frank during the war after they were married. So, it makes me kind of wonder, what would Frank think about that? Because we know exactly what Frank thinks about, infidelity, because he's had that conversation with her already. So, and then later on in the chapter, Claire admits that, she's attracted to Jamie and had been attracted to him before. She kind of tried to suppress it, but now she's having to kind of admit it to herself. And she even says, there have been times during the war when she herself had been infatuated with other, doctors or other soldiers or whatever, but had never acted upon it. So at this point, she clearly thinks, I'm infatuated with him. It's nothing but infatuation. And I think that that's an important thing to kind of keep in mind. So they go back to the inn, and they, they talk some more. There's a lot of talking, and I appreciate the talking, but, this is a really long chapter. Jamie is still trying to kind of figure out who she is. Is she a spy? Is she an English spy? Is she a French spy? What is she, right? And that's kind of the end of the chapter. Chapter 17, we meet a beggar. So in this one, they go back out, because this is their honeymoon, people. We take trips to the Caribbean, or, maybe to, a city in the U.S. that we've never been to, or maybe Europe or Asia or something like that. They get to hang around in this area together and kind of get to know each other, and that's about it. They go back out. They're spending time together. She kind of talks to him about his mother, who died in childbirth when he was about 8, which is tough. He takes her to this like rock. And while they're there, they meet Hugh Monroe, who is a beggar. And Hugh has this kind of very interesting backstory. Like, you know, he's a beggar, but he was a teacher at one point. And then he was captured and taken prisoner and I guess sold into slavery. And he had his like tongue cut out, I guess, and his back was broken. And he's a very interesting kind of person. You know, much more educated than you would think, which kind of goes to prove, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. You know, so he and Jamie kind of bond, and he tells Jamie, "Oh, I'm married to another woman, or to this woman." He tells Jamie tells Claire that Hugh has gotten these gaberlunzies, is what they're called, which are these like lead like things, I guess, that it's a license to beg, basically. So he is allowed to beg in several different parishes, which is kind of unusual. Like, I don't think they would normally do something like that. But because he had his tongue cut out, he had boiling oil poured over his feet, or his feet were put in boiling oil. Several parishes are giving him leave to beg to make up for his trials on behalf of Christendom. So they're looking at his he's kind of like a martyr. So they're like, you know, we're not going to give you food, but we're going to give you food, but we're just basically going to let you be allowed to beg. So anyway, so they talk for a while. They go back to the inn. There's a lot of discussion about sex, just Jamie kind of, I guess, learning about it. I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. Then we get to chapter 18, which is Raiders in the Rocks. Dougal has been to see Captain Randall, and Randall is not happy with the fact that he is not going to be presenting Claire to Fort William on the day that he is told to, because Claire is now Scottish by marriage. So there's that, and it suddenly kind of dawns on her that now she's niece to call him, which is kind of interesting. You know, they're out to camp, and while they're camping, they are raided by another clan, some other clansmen from a different clan. So I think that's Grant's. And so Claire kind of gets to see her first, like, up close hand-to-hand combat. It's not super serious. It's not like a war. But it is shocking to her. Dougal gets cut on the arm, and she, of course, doctors everybody up afterwards, and most of the injuries are pretty minor. But at one point, it becomes apparent that, you know, Jamie hasn't taught her how to defend herself in, like, hand-to-hand combat. So she spends the day being taught how to handle a dirk so that she can defend herself if she needs to. And the men do a very thorough job. Like, it's not just a matter of showing her how to do it. Like, they put her through her paces. So it's a very interesting kind of thing. And at one point, she asks if they're going to teach her how to shoot their guns, and Jamie's like, no, because, like, if you tried to shoot this, like, you would lose a tooth or get a black eye or something like that, because it's, like, the weapons back then were just way more intense. Not intense is not the good word, but just different than probably what she's accustomed to. And it's interesting to me because I'm sure that as a nurse in World War II, she'd probably fired a weapon or been trained to fire some kind of weapon. But again, it just kind of goes back to sometimes Claire doesn't realize that this is a very different time that she's living in than where she came from. So yes, there were guns in the 20th century, there were guns in the 18th century, but the two are nothing alike. So anyway, there's all of that, and learning how to use a weapon comes in handy in the next couple of chapters. Chapter 19 is very, very short, surprisingly, where they camp by Loch Ness, and she walks down to the lake, and she meets the Loch Ness monster, which is it's kind of interesting. But she realizes that there's another man who's a part of their group. His name's Peter, who also sees the monster and sees her, not interacting, but looking at the monster. And I think he is terrified. She is not. And I think that's going to come back and haunt her later, I think. So anyway, then we get to chapter 20. And so we're getting close to the time when Jamie is supposed to go rendezvous with this deserted British soldier who supposedly knows who killed this other soldier. And Jamie is going to leave her in this glade because he doesn't want her to come with him because he says it's too dangerous. And she is not happy about that. Is that really what happened? Or am I getting myself confused? Oh, no, that is not what happened. Hi, what's up, kiddo? You make me a star? Thank you, kiddo. What's it say?
That's funny.
Mom is the star of the show.
I did the same thing for Daddy.
Oh, thank you, kiddo. Give me hugs. Ooh, your shirt is wet. The back. It's the back from your hair. So, go. So I take that back. No, they didn't. They had not. That hasn't happened just yet. So they go down to this glade where there's water under the pretense of refilling everybody's water bottles. And they get down there and they're in the middle of having sex, and all of a sudden these two British deserters show up, and they're going to kill him, and they're going to rape Claire. Like, that's what's going to go down. And so this is when Claire's training with the dirk comes in handy. So she kills one man, and Jamie kills the other man, and they're both very shaken up by it. Jamie feels horrible that he's put her in a position where this could happen to her. And he feels, she's like, it's okay. He didn't do it on purpose. Like, it's not his fault necessarily. But Jamie feels terrible. Dougal comes and finds them. It's been like an hour. So, thank God he finally showed up. They go back, and of course this is left, Claire's a little bit now gun shy, because I think every so often she's just reminded that this is not the same. It may be the same country that she left behind, but these are not the same. The rules are not the same. And just about the time that you start letting your guard down is going to be when something is going to happen. So at this point, it's time for the rendezvous with Horrocks, and Jamie's like, I'm going to leave you in this glade. You wait here. I will come back when I am done and get you. And she's like, no, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave. And can't you take me with you? And he's like, no, it's too dangerous. So she goes into the glade, and she kind of starts wandering around, and it suddenly dawns on her that she knows where she is, and she knows that she's not far from Craignadoon. And she can now she can, if she wants to, she can run, and she can go home, and she can go back to Frank. And she decides she's going to make a break for it. So she starts kind of wandering her, following a stream. And at times she has to cross said stream. And so she's crossing over some rocks, and her foot slips, and she falls into this deep pool. And so she realizes I'm gonna drown because the weight of her clothes are pulling her down. And somehow, like, instead of panicking, which is of course everybody's first response, she allows herself to sink down to the bottom of the pool, and then she pushes herself up, and just enough to where she can break the surface. And she realizes, if I can break the surface and get a breath of air, then I can kind of bounce myself over until I can reach the edge of the rocks and like pull myself out. And so she gets a breath of air and she sinks back down. And when she comes back up, a hand grabs hers. And when she opens her eyes, it's the face of Corporal Hawkins, which is kind of the assistant to Black Jack Randall. And that's the end of chapter 20. So we all know no good thing is going to come out of the fact that she has now run into Corporal Hawkins, because it is doubtful that Corporal Hawkins is alone. So anyway, that's where we ended at, people. So I don't have a lot of questions this week. I can only come up with about 4. So question 1. If you time traveled, how much of the future from which you have come would you be tempted to reveal? What might you attempt to change using your knowledge of modern times? And this becomes an ongoing theme within the book series. So, what you answer now, maybe you may change your mind later. Number 2, to what extent do you think Claire's marriage to Jamie is starting to compromise her marriage to Frank? Chapter 3. Nothing much really happens in these chapters. Things certainly happen. So Jamie and Claire's relationship deepens. Claire learns to use how to use a dirk. There's a raid on their camp. Claire is almost raped again, and 2 British deserters are killed. Claire meets Nessie, and Claire decides to make a break for Craig Nadoon, which almost ends with her drowning. What do you think the overall purpose of these chapters is? Why are we spending 5 chapters on all of this? And 4, let's talk about Claire's near drowning episode. This just, the whole episode strikes me as very interesting. So let's discuss. You don't have to, but I will in the comments. So anyway, that's it for today, people. Chapters 21 through 25 next week. And we will see you again later. Bye.